What's good, YouTube? It's your boy JusticeXFalls. We back at it again with another video. And today we're gonna check out a couple videos that relate to the new Walking Dead, The Last of Us TV show. If you don't know, The Last of Us TV show, it premieres on Sunday the 15th on HBO MAX. It will cover the entirety of the first game. They'll probably break it into multiple seasons because Last of Us 1 was a pretty long game. I remember it was a pretty long game. I didn't play it on stream or nothing. I posted a few clips, but I remember I have to do multiple sit downs to beat that game. All right. So here, first we're gonna check out how HBO's The Last of Us can avoid but AMC's The Walking Dead's mistakes, because a lot of us tuned out at different points, and it's like the audience that was there in the first 3 seasons was not the audience that was there in the last 3 seasons or the middle or the seasons in the middle. So we're gonna check out these videos and see and have some dialogue about how The Last of Us can be a successful show. So without further ado, I know I've been talking for too long. Let's get to the video.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? I'm Akeem LaWanton, and in
Shout out to my
today's
brother
Fixer
Akeem,
Entertainment
bro.
news, I'll be breaking down how HBO's The Last of Us can avoid the various mistakes AMC's The Walking Dead made in its 11-season run on television, Fear the Walking Dead finally coming to an end, and an actor from the Black Panther 2 movie wins a major award at the Golden Globes. Let's drop it.
The Fix Entertainment.
We're gearing up for HBO's The Last of Us, and with the early reviews, interviews from both showrunner Craig Mazin and director Neil Druckmann, it seems as though we'll be getting a very faithful adaptation of the Naughty Dog video game series, aside from tendrils spreading the zombie infection as opposed to spores. But you know what? That's a very minor change to a seemingly solid adaptation of the franchise. Now, one comparison that's sure to be drawn is to the Walking Dead series, which recently ended its 11-season run last year. Now, much like HBO's The Last of Us, AMC's The Walking Dead had a clear blueprint the showrunners and writers could have used to steer the story arcs and plots. But creator Robert Kirkman was open to the writers of The Walking Dead series changing his source material how they saw fit. That's a bad move, in my opinion. In fact, Kirkman said in a Q&A panel hosted by Hey Fandom back in 2020, referring to the writers picking apart his source material, quote, "It seems like it's an absolute nightmare, but it was really great and rewarding to have them go, this story worked because of this, and we can change this way because of that, and this really worked well, and we can make it better by adding this."
That's cap.
For anyone
that's cap. That's a nice way to say, I put out a good story. I laid the foundation for y'all. Y'all came to me and asked me to use my stuff, and y'all butchered it. But he was like, "Oh, well, I mean, this changed to that, which let this change." No. That's cap. He don't really mean that. He's grateful to have made the millions of dollars that he's made off the show. You know, financially, monetarily wise, and then in turn the sales that the book got based off how popular the show was. You know, for those people that wanted to go back and read the original material, he's grateful for that. But it's creatively, I think they lost him early. Probably early in like season 5, they lost him. Probably even before that. That's how I interpret that statement. That's my opinion.
Had actually watched the long-running AMC series, there seem to be more subtractions than additions, like the removal of Carl Grimes' character back in season 8. Like, they killed off a very pivotal character to the Walking Dead series, one that lived well through the final pages of the comic book run.
Right, that was
Kirkman
weird.
Allowing the very foundation he built to be torn down and played with was a detriment to the series, which is why there was a significant drop-off in viewership. Now, HBO's The Last of Us can avoid this by staying true to the source material and keeping fans of the franchise excited for what's to come, even if we might already know what to expect given the games.
Right, we don't care. We know what's coming, but we just want to see it in a live adaptation. You don't have to stray so far away from the source material. That's how you get people to tune out, and that's why people did tune out. Like, if you look at the ratings, somebody did a long comprehensive video. The whole channel was dedicated to The Walking Dead. I forget bro name, but he showed the charts, and you saw the drop in viewership across each season.
Now, messing with what's already been established and creating stories well beyond its source material really killed the Walking Dead franchise for a lot of fans. But it seems we won't have to worry about that with The Last of Us. In fact, Neil Druckmann told The Hollywood Reporter that, quote, "We have no plans to tell any stories beyond adapting the games. We won't run into the same issue as Game of Thrones since The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't end on a cliffhanger." And with sticking to adapting the games only,
The Last of Us 2 doesn't end on a cliffhanger. I know you fucking lying. Neil. The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't end on a cliffhanger? I know you fucking lying. I'm not going to spoil the game for nobody. Now, it wasn't a blatant cliffhanger. Like, I don't think they meant for it to end as a cliffhanger, like a traditional cliffhanger would end. But, bro, there's a lot left to be desired, and there's a lot of questions to be answered at the end of The Last of Us Part 2. If you know, you know. If you don't know, go play that game, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Come on, Neil.
we likely won't get a lot of seasons of The Last of Us, which is honestly fine. Aside from changing a lot of things fans remember from the comics, The Walking Dead stuck around longer than it really needed to. And the viewership declined possibly due to zombie fatigue amongst fans. And according to review ratings data collected by IMDb by Broadband Choices, the Walking Dead series saw a sharp drop-off in viewership after the 7th season premiere episode where Negan killed both Abraham and Glenn. In the comics, Negan only executed Glenn, so what was the point of killing off Abraham aside from cannon fodder? Like, it was shocking, yes, but for all the wrong reasons. And then Carl was killed off in season 8 after being bitten by a walker, which many considered to be poor writing given his comic book counterpart. In season 9, Rick Grimes was written off the show, and seasons 10 and 11 came and went with a whimper. Now, this is coming from a hardcore Walking Dead fan and zombie enthusiast. Like, I love all things zombie related, but I'm also someone who likes to see adaptations done right in the eyes of the fans. Now, obviously, one of the many things that makes a live show more complicated than a comic is having to account for the schedules and availability of actors, which I imagine had some impact on The Walking Dead's decisions, but still. Like, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann can avoid the pratfalls of The Walking Dead by not doing things like prolonging storylines to exhaustion and killing off important characters for the sake of shock value. Although the latter part of that statement will inevitably happen at some point in the HBO series given the video games. But it'll be intentional and not because a bunch of writers in a room sat around thinking up ways they could change the source material to give viewers something unexpected for the sake of shock value. The Walking Dead.
You see, like, a lot of writers that do these shows and do these movies based off materials that's already out, they get these massive egos. They get these big heads, and instead of making a faithful adaptation, because just because you copy the story directly from print to big screen or small screen, that doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly the same. It's a whole different vibe that you're creating, you know. So you still have that your creative vision is still being shined through. You're just using it through somebody else's source material and not what comes out of your head. I think a lot of times these writers, they try to force their narrative in there so hard so you can say, yeah, I wrote that part. This didn't happen in the source material, but I wrote that part and I thought it was pretty good. No, it was whack. It was whack, and it broke the narrative of the original story. So please, HBO, don't do that. Don't do that. Just stick to what's there. If you're gonna deviate, add more layers to it. Don't take away layers. You feel what I'm saying?
Dead just became AMC's money-making machine with all the different spin-offs it was given, which devalues the franchise and makes it seem as though you're no longer creating shows in this universe to appease the fandom, but more or less so you can make a quick buck off the namesake of the franchise.
I did not watch.
I'll tell you right now, if Abby from The Last of Us gets her own spin-off series at some point, then there will indeed be riots in the streets. But anyway, what are your thoughts on The Last of Us, and how do you think it can avoid the mistakes of The Walking Dead? Let's talk about it down below. And while we're at it, Fear the Walking Dead is finally ending its 8-season run on AMC.
Wow, they got
now, the
8
series
seasons?
will consist of 12 episodes, with the first block rolling out in May. Now, with that announcement, the Walking Dead universe is continuing to grow, with The Walking Dead Dead City, which will take place in New York City, and The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, which will take place in Paris. The Walker Apocalypse is going international, baby, and the Rick and Michonne series is still happening, set to debut in 2024.
Okay.
And finally, shout out to Angela Bassett for winning Best Supporting Actress at the Golden Globes for her role in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Wow.
Now, she's the first actor from a Marvel movie to win a major award,
I didn't know that.
which is quite the achievement and speaks to her portrayal of Wakandan Queen Ramonda. Now, she also gave a very heartfelt speech and honored the late Chadwick Boseman. Now, anyone that's seen the movie would agree she gave the performance of the year in that particular film. And that about does it for your entertainment fix for today. I'm Akeem Lawanson, and thank you so much for watching. Now that you're caught up on today's news, please check out our previous episode. Download the IGN app on all your devices, and for everything else, stick with IGN.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So next we're gonna watch Can Last of Us Bring Zombies Back to Life? So I'm assuming they're just gonna compare the show to other like zombie shows. Probably like Twilight and what was it, Vampire Diaries and all that other stuff. So we're gonna check this out. So let's see what it's talking about.
I've cared for.
This one's a little longer, so bear with me, bear with me.
Has either died or left me.
You have no idea what loss is.
After an extremely impressive 12-year run, the ending of The Walking Dead is the final bolt through the decaying brain that was the late-aughts zombie craze. The flagship TV show is over, and while The Walking Dead IP itself endures in spin-offs and such, the ghastly torch of the zombie genre has been passed to a new bearer, HBO's The Last of Us. The cable and streaming giant has high hopes for the series, but if you take away the smash hit game, soulful characters, and big Hollywood name, it's a boilerplate zombie apocalypse with a fresh coat of fungus. And that might seem a bit passé now, which is why the marketing of the show kinda seems to be avoiding the Z word at all costs.
The Z word, don't say it. Why not? Because it's ridiculous.
Fans of the games will know that the real appeal is in the craft and details of Naughty Dog's ruined world, the brutality of its stealth action gameplay, and of course, the incredible characters whose very existence sets the internet ablaze.
I'm not gonna lie. You see that the part before? The part where you meet the guy, I think his name was Bill. Where you meet the guy before y'all try to get the battery for the bus. That was one of the greatest like sections I've ever played in like a zombie game, like a survival horror type video game. Those like that whole sequence, the dialogue was on point, the level design was on point, the combat was on point, and the tension that was raised, like the character development, everything about it was just spot on. If you can go buy The Last of Us 1 or 2. It's on like 8 different consoles at this point. There's a PS3 version, there's a PS4 version, and now there's a PS5 version, and now it's on PC. So I would say pick it. I would say pick these games up, The Last of Us 1 and 2, because you're missing out if you don't.
Those who may not have heard of The Last of Us may roll their eyes upon discovering that it is at its core yet another zombie story. But it wasn't all that long ago that zombies were a bona fide cultural phenomenon. So let's examine where the franchise fits within the genre and try to figure out if The Last of Us can bring zombies back to life.
You trust me?
That was such a good movie. Such a funny
The Last
movie.
of Us owes its existence to zombie mania. In 1968, Pittsburgh filmmaker George Romero drew on the apocalyptic imagery of The Last Man on Earth, a Vincent Price film that was itself an adaptation of author Richard Matheson's iconic I Am Legend, all to conjure up an army of cannibal ghouls in Night of the Living Dead.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Outside of Romero's initial trilogy and a few very impressive imitators, zombie films never enjoyed the popularity and dominance of slasher flicks, and they seemed even more kitsch and toothless when slashers achieved post-modernity with Scream.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Zombies did, however, make for excellent cannon fodder. The Living Dead have been staples of violent video games before they were even in color. 1976's controversial Death Race, arguably the first truly violent game, awarded points for running down plausibly deniable undead gremlins. For the most part, the zombies in your average retro game weren't all that scary, but then Resident Evil made them terrifying.
Resident Evil, yep.
Known as Biohazard in Japan, Shinji Mikami's survival horror masterpiece hit the market in 1996, the same year as Scream. The game sparked a surge of interest in the classic zombie films to which it paid homage, and inspired a new generation of filmmakers to update The Living Dead for a new millennium. First came inventive Asian films like Junk, Wild Zero, and Bio-Zombie. Then, the game started influencing Western filmmakers like Alec Garland. Resident Evil reminded him how much he loved zombies, inspiring the extremely dangerous sprinting infected in 2002's 28 Days Later. Fellow Brits Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright featured a fantasy sequence in the style of Resident Evil 2, and then the literal game itself in their sitcom Spaced.
Hiya.
Don't sneak up on me like that.
Which provided the seed for their incredible satire, Shaun of the Dead, in 2004. The same year, America brought out the big guns with the undisputedly awesome Dawn of the Dead remake, proof that the visions of Zack Snyder and James Gunn can coexist.
Yeah, they made magic together. I'm just saying. So James Gunn, Zack Snyder, you know what I mean? Y'all need to come to James Gunn. You need to let Zack Snyder pull up and help you with that DC universe, because he can make it better. He can make it better.
Beyond their box office success, zombies transcended the cinema in a way that slashers never could. In 2003, OG Nepo baby Max Brooks published the Zombie Survival Guide, a staple of many a millennial's bathroom library. The book was written entirely in kayfabe, a deadpan instruction manual for surviving and thriving in a real-world undead apocalypse, oozing with axioms like use your head, cut off theirs, and blades don't need reloading. The guide perfectly targeted the doomsday prepper parts of our delicious brains, which were already working overtime in the paranoia of post-9/11 America. It sparked countless thought experiments and nerdy debates over which blunt object would best bash a zombie's skull. Not long after, Robert Kirkman added soap opera melodrama to the zombie formula in his creator-owned image comic, The Walking Dead, which in turn became a smash hit TV show that only just ended long after the zombie craze subsided. For a while, all of pop culture seemed locked within the gnashing jaws of a living corpse. College students and convention goers around the world shambled across cities in massive zombie walks. Lighthearted Zomcom spin-offs created an accessible path for wider audiences to enjoy zombie fiction without all of the gore and terror. In some circles, they joined sparkly vampires and shirtless werewolves as objects of adolescent desire.
I think I'm being attacked by zombies, and I start screaming, "Do you want to make out?" And I make out with it.
In cinemas, things came full circle with Romero returning to the genre he created, and a new adaptation of I Am Legend that took more from the zombie tropes inspired by the original novel than the book itself. And back in the world of video games, the medium
Zombie
had
modes.
become overrun by the undead swarm, which is a big reason why The Last of Us initially received some groans.
Man, zombies ain't going nowhere, man. Zombies always gonna be lit.
Sony and Naughty Dog first teased the PS3 exclusive in 2011 with mysterious imagery of a shattered society and mind-controlled ants. Speculation abounded, with one common refrain among all the rumors being, "Please don't be a zombie game." After all, we had seen a whole lot of those by the time the game was released in 2013.
Ryzen, yep.
Zombie adventure games, zombie mobile games, zombie shopping games, and even zombie educational games. They quickly supplanted World War II as the go-to gaming genre, and it's not hard to understand why. Much like the Nazis they replaced, and in some cases became, the undead serve an extremely useful purpose as humanoid enemies that you don't have to feel all weird about killing.
Right.
But even though The Last of Us was just another zombie game, it was also so much more. A gorgeous technical showcase, a tense, stealthy thriller, and a gripping story that ends in a moral conundrum that has sparked one of the longest and most brutal internet flame wars of all time.
I'm taking this home. I'm sorry.
It's got naturalistic mocap performances from incredible actors and a visual and tonal aesthetic borrowed from heavy hitters like Children of Men and The Road. It's even got giraffes.
Yeah, that was quite a moment, you know, in the game when you...
But it's still a zombie story, and not even a particular...
That giraffe moment, like, this moment in the game, it's like, I don't know, when I experienced it, and this is after me already knowing about it, knowing that the part was coming, you know, like when I experienced it, it was like, wow, like in this crazy world that humanity created, you know, there's still some sense of beauty and nature in it. And it just shows that even when we're not here, when we all fuck up the world, we all blow it up and kill each other, or the zombies take over, or World War III, World War, whatever happens, the world and nature is still gonna thrive, you know. And that was just like a beautiful little moment between the tension of what you're going through at that point in the story. It's just a little break from the chaos, and you get to just really sit back and think like, yo, the world is really a beautiful place. And low key, it'll be better off without us, because it's gonna survive without us, there or not. So yeah, that's what I took from that part of the game.
But it's still a zombie story, and not even a particularly novel one. The cordyceps fungus that turns people into shrieking mushroom monsters is a unique twist, but one could swap it fairly seamlessly with the T-virus, Solanum, Rage, space radiation, or a Sumatran rat monkey. Ditto the different mutated forms. While not as gleefully over the top as the bioorganic weapons of Resident Evil, the bloaters and lickers, I mean clickers, certainly owe a debt to the granddaddy of survival horror. Indeed. Creator Neil Druckmann had a very...
And the rat god too. The rat god from part 2, that's definitely some Titan shit, you know, from Resident Evil. It's definitely a character from one of the lettered viruses.
A different vibe in mind when he first pitched The Last of Us as an intimate study of two characters, the bond they form, and the way it's tested by the cruel world they live in.
I swear.
It's always been about Ellie and Joel.
It took the tone, pacing, and production values of prestige TV and applied it to video games, the same way Hideo Kojima incorporated the language of action movies into Metal Gear Solid. But it's still a zombie story, and there's nothing wrong with that. Zombie stories are awesome, but there's no denying that they seem like yesterday's news, and it's tough to get excited about the genre after so many years of saturation.
Ah, Sade. That's Liz's. Yeah, but she did dump you. Oh.
You certainly won't see any hell yeah it's zombies enthusiasm from the folks behind the adaptation. In the latest episode of the perpetual online controversy that curses The Last of Us, we recently learned that in the TV show, the cordyceps infection would no longer spread through dense clouds of spores, but rather through fungal tendrils. It's not the biggest change, and it's certainly an understandable one. I'm sure Pedro Pascal would rather not spend another show with his face stuffed behind a respirator. Plus, the tendrils and the way they connect the minds of the infected will help set The Last of Us apart from its undead brethren. Showrunner Craig Mazin has said he's not interested in the zombies, while Druckmann himself has stated point blank we wanted to avoid making a zombie show. And who could blame them? At its heart, The Last of Us isn't really about guts and gore and sci-fi monsters. It's about people who have lost everything and the connection they forge in terrible circumstances. To call it a zombie show does it a disservice. And besides, isn't the zombie genre dead?
So yeah, it's just a dystopian drama, because there's many ways you can get to that point of where you lost everything. With dystopia, it could be war, it could be famine, it could be some other form of sickness that just causes people to die, not even turn into zombies or nothing like that. But the cordyceps just adds a layer to it, that, that's something that's in the back burner that has to be worried about, but it's also like a driving point of the story at the same time. So it's in the forefront, but it's not really in the forefront, because the forefront of the show is actually what he said, the connections you make with people as you go along, like, and how you're going to navigate this dystopian world together or not together.
I think of the 2013 World War Z movie as the high water mark of the zombie craze. The film cynically co-opts the title of Max Brooks's clever follow-up to his survival guide, while dumping the plot, characters, and unique docudrama format. Reception was mixed, to say the least, but with a cool $500 million at the box office, it remains the highest grossing zombie movie of all time.
Wow, where was he?
And it will probably stay that way. Further films in the genre saw diminishing returns as...
I played the game, but I never watched the movie. That movie, that's the highest grossing zombie film of all time? Damn. Okay, I need to watch that.
Pop culture was swallowed by superheroes, and zombies soon joined the ranks of pirates, ninjas, and performative love of bacon in the upper echelon of epic cringe. But they didn't go anywhere. The Walking Dead kept on trucking. Its ratings only really started to decline in 2016, but it still shambled on along with a bevy of lower budget spin-offs and limited series. Zombies were replaced at the box office by classy A24 horror kino and the Blumhouse machine, but there's still a fertile playground for inventive filmmakers to mess around in.
Terrifier 2.
He's a goddamn zombie tiger. That's crossing the line.
The Resident Evil games have moved on to hillbillies and giant vampire women, but some of the biggest video games in the world still involve scraping undead guts off your Moonlight Greatsword. Zombies aren't trendy, but what does that even mean in 2023? There's not really one prevailing, overwhelming thing anymore. The monoculture has shattered into thousands of boutique subcultures. Shows and movies just sort of come out, and even massive hits like Avatar and Top Gun Maverick are infamous for their lack of mimetic impact. We may never have an endgame moment again.
Assemble.
But you see, in order to have an end game level moment like that, there has to be like cohesive world building, and there has to be like intentional, very intentional. Okay, we're gonna get to this point at some time, but not yet. I think The Walking Dead, they were too focused on, again, the writers were too focused on adding what they thought would be cool and killing off characters rather than sticking to the source material. And granted, Endgame and all that, it don't really stick to the source material either, but it sticks to the continuity that they've built in that world from the beginning. You know, of course, you had a few duds in there as far as the films. There was a few duds. There's always is, whether it's a TV show or a movie. But when it all culminated to that moment, the end game, shit, set the world on fire.
But that doesn't mean superheroes are going away. Even if the profits plateau and the budgets become slightly more modest, there's always going to be money in that particular banana stand. As media evolves, Marvel and DC might just become background noise, cool and profitable content to check out on streaming, but never again the phenomenon that was phases 1 through 3.
No, give me that. You have the little one.
And that's okay. Take westerns or musicals or raunchy college comedies.
Yes! Take that, Bitterman!
When something becomes big enough to dominate an entire industry, let alone a culture, their impact doesn't vanish when the memes do. Genres don't die, they just become shambling corpses gnawing on the periphery of pop culture, waiting for a chance to rise again. The story and characters of The Last of Us do indeed transcend the genre, but zombie fiction is foundational to the narrative. Ellie and Joel would not be Ellie and Joel if their world was ended by aliens, insects, or giant rampaging kaiju. They are who they are because of the path paved by their predecessors in zombie film, TV, literature, and gaming. The Last of Us already has to deal with the negative perceptions surrounding video game adaptations. They shouldn't have to fight the zombie label too, because much as the original elevated the storytelling, production value, and craft work of games, The Last of Us TV series has some real potential to bring prestige, popularity, and power back to the zombie genre.
That was dope. That was really dope. Okay, so it looks like there was one more video there with a Neil Druckmann interview of how to avoid a TV show, the TV show adaptation curse. I think I want to check that out too. Let's see. We'll see what Mr. Druckmann has to say. Let's check that out.
For the world. Why bother going on?
You haven't seen the world, so you don't know.
I'm certainly aware of the video game curse. The easy part was that I got the best story ever told in video games, in my opinion. This incredible relationship and a video game that naturally lent itself, I thought, to long-form storytelling. The trick is to love it. Honestly, it's as simple as that. Love it and love the characters, love the relationships, love the world, love all the little details, understand it, play it over and over. All these things then lead into a place where you can carry the soul through. The other incredible benefit I had was that I was making it with Neil Druckmann. So I knew I was never going to be able to break anything because he was there, but also Neil just loved the adaptation process. He wasn't scared. He wasn't precious. Sometimes I had to argue with him about doing things exactly the same because I come at it from the fan point of view. But the simple answer is just a true understanding of the material and a love for it. That's essential. Anything else is sort of calculated and cynical and probably won't work.
You know, we at Naughty Dog created a game that, you know, I told a compelling story about Joel and Ellie's journey in the interactive medium. Now, there are parts of it that are not interactive, like cutscenes, but, you know, a lot of it works because we're creating a certain immersion that makes you feel like you're Joel, or another part of the game like you are Ellie. I didn't want to be too...
And I will say, like, although the cutscenes aren't interactive, they always tell a story and they always drop you right into the action. Like, there's no skip ahead and you're just standing there. It drops you right into the action, or like right after the action happened, like right after the action in the cutscenes. And that's something that definitely kept me immersed and made me want to keep sitting down and trying to, put in 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours every sit down.
precious about everything because I feel like that would hurt the adaptation process, where certain things I knew would have to change when we go from this medium to the other. Like if these kind of long extended action sequences that you're playing, if we just try to put them on the screen, it would be make for a very boring show, even though it makes for a really compelling game. So that's why that's one of the reasons why I kind of kept an open mind. The other one was I wrote the first game. I was the sole writer on it. Here I have a writing partner, so it would be foolish of me not to lean in to say, here, look, Craig is a brilliant writer. What ideas is he going to bring to the table? How can he help elevate or expand or just go on really interesting detours? You know, there's a famous concept art that we had for the game made by Hyung Nam, where you see Joel and Ellie sitting by a campfire and laughing. And that was a moment we just couldn't make work in the game. So that was one of the conversations I had with Craig of like, well, how do we capture that? Is there a way to get kind of these downbeat moments? Again, wouldn't afford any gameplay, which is why we couldn't do them in the game, but we could put them in the show and really expand on them. And then the other one, so much of The Last of Us is perspective. No one is truly like good or truly bad. They all live in these shades of gray, and they're trying to do the best they can with their own life philosophy. And then to explore the other side of, like, again, people that would just in the game were this obstacle, like this villainous obstacle. And we try to expand them, with notes that you pick up. So, again, something we couldn't do in the show. So for example, the hunters now you get to see more of like, well, where did they come from? Why did they bring down this quarantine zone? Who is their leader? Those are all things we get to see in the show.
Somewhere out west, they're working on a cure. I think what really impressed them was the fact that I didn't turn into a monster.
And I think something we didn't see, because when you play The Last of Us 1, not to spoil the game too much for those of you that haven't played it yet. I mean, it's just the beginning of the game. You get thrown right into Joel's situation wherever he's at, wherever survival camp he's at. You get thrown right into his situation, and then his situation shortly goes to hell, and he's tasked with, he meets up with certain people, a certain person, who then tasks him with, taking this girl where she needs to go, and in doing that, you then set the stage for what's all the crazy stuff that's gonna happen, all the crazy stuff that happens between that moment when he meets Ellie to all the way to the end of part 2. So it's nuts. It's really nuts. I don't want to spoil it for nobody. I just feel like you got to check it out. But as far as this video and what they're saying, yes, you have to love the material. You have to really love the material. You have to, because if you love the material, you're going to want to do it right. You're going to want to do right by it. You're not going to want to deviate too much. You're not going to want to stray too much from the path. If anything, like Neil said, like I said earlier in this video, you're going to want to add to it. You're going to want to add layers to it or explore parts that you couldn't explore in the game. You don't want to take away from the original just to put your own little original idea in it, which oftentimes is trash and breaks the narrative. Like, just to be real. So, yeah. So, damn, we've been going on. This is almost 40 minutes. I didn't even know I was talking about this song. That's how you know I'm excited for this. So, yeah. So, y'all let me know what y'all think. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Y'all excited for the TV show? Have you played 1 and 2? Comment down below. Let's talk about it. So, y'all already know the vibes. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. This your boy JusticeXFalls. We out. 1.